Good evening. We all said our goodbyes to the Princess of Wales today in the streets of our nation, in our homes and in our hearts. And we said it with flowers, a host of them, strewn across the entire funeral route as the coffin passed. The family had requested a unique funeral for a unique lady, and so it was. In addition to the flowers, applause for the cortege. She was, of course, the people's princess, but she had another name too, and a card at the top of the coffin spelled that out. It was addressed to Mummy. The day had its controversy, an apparent attack on the royals and the media by Earl Spencer at the service. Colin Baker begins our series of extended reports.
Through the streets of London, they walked with Diana. Taking a sleeping princess to a place of peace and quiet, to rest for all. And as she had been with the people, so they now were with her, never straying from her side on this, the last day. Diana, Princess of Wales, leaving behind the palaces of London, beginning the journey back to the Shires, where she came from. Diana going home, all too soon. The nation knew it, but the nation could only stand helpless and weep. The royal standard was draped over the coffin, borne on a gun carriage, and drawn by horses from the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. 3 floral tributes on top, including one from her brother, Earl Spencer, and one from a young boy, Prince Harry. Through Apsley Gate, normally opened only for the sovereign, the escort of 12 Welsh guardsmen took their princess slowly towards Constitution Hill and Buckingham Palace. The people moved to silence, and beneath the late summer's sun, the pall of sadness hung heavy. No one can remember when the royal family in mourning ever walked out of the palace before to pay their respects, but they did just that today. As the cortege made its way around the palace, which has been this week the centre of the people's grief and sorrow. A few hundred yards away down the Mall, close by St James's Palace, Diana's brother, her 2 sons, Prince Charles and the Duke of Edinburgh, were drawn slowly by the sound of hooves to join the cortege. And falling in behind them, 500 official mourners representing the 100 charities with which Diana was associated. It was an earthly touch, and one of which, without doubt, she would have approved. And though many had waited so long, the moment caught them unprepared. The tears and the depth of sorrow unrestricted. In front of them, images and memories of one so vibrant, so caring and unfettered, were being carried away from them forever. Diana touched all worlds without discrimination, and so, from around the world, they came for this last opportunity to say goodbye. Hillary Clinton, Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise and his wife Nicole Kidman, and Imran Khan with his wife and Diana's friend Jemima. Elton John, who was to sing, was there with George Michael. The Prime Minister Tony Blair was with his wife Cherie. And Mohammed Al-Fayed, who lost his son Dodi in the crash last Sunday, was there to bid farewell to a princess who was a family friend. The Duchess of York, once one of the closest of Diana's friends, was there with the Duke of York and their children Beatrice and Eugenie. Queen arrived with the Queen Mother. The Queen had described Diana as an exceptionally gifted human being. In good times and bad, she said, Diana never lost the capacity to smile and to laugh. Shortly before 11 o'clock, the procession arrived at Westminster Abbey, 900 years old and rarely the centre of such focused emotion. And as Big Ben signalled the 11th hour, Diana was carried into the Abbey. The Princess of Wales' sister, Lady Jane Fellows, read a poem about time, cruelly denied to Diana.
Time is too slow for those who wait, too swift for those who fear, too long for those who grieve, too short for those who rejoice. But for those who love, time is eternity.
The Prime Minister's reading was from St. Paul's epistle to the Corinthians.
And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love.
Elton John had rewritten the words to a song that the people have now so identified with the sudden loss of their princess.
Goodbye, Rose, may you well grow in our hearts. You were the greatest place to set where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, this road from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest field. Your candles burned out long before legend ever will.
The eulogy from Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, was unexpectedly controversial.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. And here we come to another truth about her. For all the status, the glamour, the applause, Diana remained throughout a very insecure person at heart, almost childlike in her desire to do good for others, so she could release herself from deep feelings of unworthiness, of which her eating disorders were merely a symptom. but I would rather cherish the days I spent with her in March, when she came to visit me and my children in our home in South Africa. I am proud of the fact that, apart from when she was on public display meeting President Mandela, we managed to contrive to stop the ever-present paparazzi from getting a single picture of her. That meant a lot to her. There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this: a girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead. I know you would have expected nothing less from us.
In the parks, where tens of thousands had just heard the speech relayed, there was applause. It spread and rolled from the parks through the streets and was heard in the Abbey. And there it ignited a flame which swept through the aisles and the benches. It was spontaneous, and it came from those who knew Diana best, her friends. And then for 1 minute the world outside was hushed, before the journey to the little island at the family home. It was a spell broken only by the bells of the Abbey. The bells marked perhaps the end of a week which began with such utter disbelief, and the end of an era before its promise could be truly fulfilled. Colin Baker, ITV.
The incredible strength of feeling for the princess continued after the funeral service, as the cortege slowly made its way through the streets of North London for the journey back to Althorp in Northamptonshire. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the route to bid the princess farewell. The crowds continued as the cortege joined the motorway, and they showered it with flowers as it passed by. Penny Marshall reports.
This was the people's goodbye for their princess, and they said it with flowers. All along the route the hearse was showered, a procession no official had orchestrated, no tradition had prescribed, one for Diana alone. There was silence save for applause as the hearse nudged its way through the banks of mourners. At times it came to a near halt through pressure from those waiting to glimpse it, almost from the sheer weight of bouquets. Far away from the royal palaces now, the princess was passing right through the heart of London's suburbs, right to the heart of the crowds. And as the procession drew away from the capital, the mourners never diminished, nor did the garlands and wreaths. Westminster Abbey may have said goodbye to royalty before, but Hendon has never had the chance. Turning towards the M1 at Brent Cross, London's crowds were preparing to let their princess go, back to her childhood home in the country, 50 miles north. Here still thousands came, a royal cortege on a motorway slip road surrounded by families stacked up the banks and bridges. In life, Diana had touched unlikely and unloved places. Today in death, in an unremarkable urban landscape, she did the same. On the M1, unable to see any longer, some flowers were removed from the windscreen before the hearse, now flanked by police, moved on. But still on the motorway, there was more. More flowers and more mourners, snaking forward off the hard shoulder and pressing onto the carriageway as traffic on the southbound section stood still. This was a scene repeated for 50 miles. Diana, Princess of Wales, was without her family on this section of her final journey northward, but the people were with her every step of the way. Penny Marshall, ITN.
The last glimpse of Diana to the outside world came as the hearse in a single limousine inched sedately through the gates of the Althorp estate. And so it was on an island surrounded by an ornamental lake in the grounds of her ancestral family home that the Princess of Wales was finally laid to rest. From Northamptonshire, Tim Ewart reports.
Far from London, in the heart of England, the Princess's cortege began the final stage of a long journey. It left the motorway near the town of Northampton, following a route to the ancestral Spencer home, a route Diana herself had taken many times. After swifter progress along the M1, the procession slowed here, once again travelling steadily along streets lined with thousands of people who turned out after watching the funeral on television. And this is the last part of the route to Althorp, through villages in Northamptonshire where Diana is still remembered as a young girl who came home for the holidays. Now she's being welcomed back for the last time.
She's very special to us here. She'll always hold a special place in our hearts. She was special to millions of people across the world, but here in Northamptonshire is her place, and we're here to welcome her home today.
I appreciate Princess Diana, so I'm going to see if I can get these flowers on the car.
You're going to throw them on the car?
Yeah, or either on the car or under.
And so he did, one 9-year-old's tribute to someone very special. And he was one of many. The flowers rained on Diana, and there was gentle applause as she was carried on her way. The grandeur of London, its palaces and Westminster Abbey seemed far away now. In these country lanes there was a tranquility, a sense of journey's end. And so the princess's body arrived at Althorp Park for an intensely private burial on an island set in a lake. No place inside for anyone except her sons and other close family members who'd arrived without fuss earlier. It was a ceremony at last, away from the relentless attention that had so dominated Diana's life. Tim Ewart, ITN, at Althorp in Northamptonshire.
As we said earlier, the entire country was enveloped by a wave of silence as the funeral service at Westminster Abbey came to an end. Everywhere, people grouped together to pay their last respects. Cities, towns, and villages came to a standstill for 1 minute. It was a final chance for the people of the nation to remember with their own thoughts Diana, Princess of Wales. Paul Davis reports.
As the service ended and the music faded, the people paid their last tribute to their princess. This was a moment when silence said everything that needed to be said. A single flare fired from the roof of Manchester's Town Hall, then quiet, as across Britain the people joined in this most simple but powerful gesture of love and loss. In the cities, in the countryside, ordinary life came to a halt. At Heathrow, the world's busiest airport, international travel stopped for a minute. After the silence, a lament. Britain's roads were deserted as people stayed at home, sharing the common grief through radio and television. At Sheffield railway station, staff joined passengers paying silent respect. The shops were closed, normal weekend life suspended to mark the passing of a princess. In the shadow of Edinburgh Castle, they watched the Westminster service and joined the silent tribute. In Belfast, where they've had more than their share of grief, today the two communities were united in sadness. In Cardiff's Llandaff Cathedral, there wasn't space for all the mourners who wanted to take part in this service. So a large crowd stood outside to say goodbye to their princess. Paul Davis, ITN.
More than 1 million people poured into central London to pay a final tribute to the princess. Almost every square inch of the route to Westminster Abbey was packed with crowds. Many were openly demonstrative about their grief. Thousands had waited all night. They were cold and tired, but they were determined to be there. John Draper reports.
It was like the weekday rush hour, yet this was the London Underground at dawn. Tens of thousands poured into the capital to join those who'd camped out overnight at Westminster Abbey. From across the land, they'd come to say goodbye.
Just to pay respect. Brought the children down from Bishop Auckland, County Durham, and this is what we want to do.
But it was only when the cortege made its way through central London, here at Buckingham Palace, taking the people's princess on her final journey, that the princess's people began fully to take in their loss.
I didn't realise I'd feel as bad as I actually did when it went past.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't help but cry when she came back. Yeah. I mean, it was so simple, the casket, the flowers on the casket, very appropriate for her.
The Union flag flew for the first time ever at Buckingham Palace. As it was lowered to half-mast, the people showed their appreciation. At Hyde Park, huge screens relayed the funeral and service to thousands more. Many had earlier this week laid flowers and stood for hours to sign the books of condolence. Now it was just too much. As mourners left Westminster Abbey, one of the princess's personal advisors, Lord Mishcon, summed up their thoughts.
If only things had been different, what a queen we would.
She never became queen, but she'll always be the people's princess. John Draper, ITN.
A day of immense sadness was tinged with controversy. Earl Spencer, in a moving and forthright tribute to his sister, attacked the media and appeared to be critical of some aspects of the royal way of life. Steve Scott reports.
A remarkable tribute producing a remarkable reaction. A standing ovation in Hyde Park. Applause that spread like a wave of support to Westminster Abbey, where mourners inside joined in. Earl Spencer has never disguised his hatred for the British press, but his feelings on his sister's life in the royal family and his anger when her title was taken away from her may have surprised many.
It was exactly what should have been said, and it was said in a controlled way.
He said it was sentiment, he said it was compassion. It was real.
Real for Diana, the ever-present camera lens. Wherever she went, whatever she did, Earl Spencer has pledged to protect the two princes, Harry and William, from being hunted like their mother.
Again, in the short term, the press are going to be very, very, very careful because they do not wish, no one in the press wants to be associated with greater unhappiness for these boys at a time of extraordinary personal pain. But long term, I mean, I think these concerns legitimate.
And in a veiled attack on the royal way of life, the Earl vowed to ensure the princes wouldn't end up immersed in duty and protocol.
I'm absolutely certain that he will find sympathy and support for those views from the royal family, and particularly from the boy's father, from Prince Charles.
But Prince Charles's biographer finds the timing of the Earl's words inappropriate.
I think today should have been about the love that we all felt for Diana. I don't think it should have... it wasn't the time to talk about the criticisms or the discord or the unhappiness that has surrounded this whole event.
His address may have reopened wounds just healing, but it has also concentrated a nation's mind on two young royals and how they should not suffer in the same way their loving mother did. Steve Scott, ITN.
Later this evening, I'll be presenting a special program looking back on the remarkable day. That's Farewell to a Princess here on ITV, starting at 9. Just as the death of President Kennedy stunned one generation, so the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, stunned another. We all remember where we were and what we were doing when we heard the news. We'll remember it forever. It's scarcely credible that only this time last week the Princess was still alive, and the events which led up to today were still to unfold. Tonight she's back home after a unique day in our nation's history, a unique funeral for a unique lady.
Goodbye, England's rose, may you ever grow in our hearts. You were the greatest place to set us, where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, English road, from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hill. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.